shouldn't have come here. This is our war, not yours.
300,000 dead and counting. That's not a war, Mr. Ito. It's genocide.
These people, they have no food. We can either help, or we can sit back and watch a country destroy itself on CNN.
Rangers, Deltas, today we go.
Name?
Blackburn.
Date of birth?
2/27/75.
I was trained to fight. Were you trained to fight, Sergeant?
I was trying to make a difference.
So guess what? You're going out today.
What?
It's what you wanted, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
Just remember when everybody else is shooting, shoot in the same direction. You ever shot at anybody before?
No, Sergeant.
Me neither.
Once that first bullet goes past your head, politics go right out the window.
Hey, baby, it's me. You there? Pick up if you're there.
I love you, baby.
RPG!
Hold on! 6 cars, go down!
Got a black hawk down. Black hawk
My men are surrounded by thousands of Somali militia. I need help now.
Where's the rescue squad?
We're in.
I can't do it.
It's what you do right now that makes a difference.
People ask me, why do you do it, man? They won't understand it's about the men next to you.
Don't let that man crawl! Somebody help that man!
That's all it is.
No one gets left behind, you know that.
Nobody asks to be a hero. It just sometimes turns out that way.
Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, broadcast on the TLBTV network and brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Bill Muckler, and I'm coming to you from my home studio in Cocoa, Florida, which is right across the river from America's beautiful Space Coast. And today I'm honored to have a great American hero, Danny McKnight. And Danny's actually recording with me from our condo unit here in Cocoa, Florida. Danny lives in Rockledge. So Danny, welcome to the American Vision. We're happy to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Bill. I'm happy to be here with you.
And Danny actually lives in Rockledge, which is the next town adjacent to Cocoa, and kind of here in Central Florida on the Atlantic coast. And Danny, you grew up in this area, so tell us a little bit about where you went to high school and college, and how you ended up getting your commission in the Army.
Well, I was born in Columbus, Georgia, and we came down here in 1959, and from there, and my dad ran a medical lab and x-ray down here with another doctorate. And I went to elementary school down here, and then I went to Cocoa High School. I actually lived in Rockledge, and that time it used to be called Cocoa Rockledge, but now they're totally separate. But I graduated from Cocoa High School in 1969. I was an athlete. I loved every ball there was to play, as my father said. I was a quarterback on the high school football team. I was a catcher on the baseball team, point guard on the basketball team. So I got a lot of opportunity to do some things that really helped me later on, and that's associated with something called leading. And I'm sure we'll get to talk more about that today. But graduated from Cocoa High, spent 2 years at Brevard Junior College, as it was called in those days. Now it's Eastern Florida State College. But went 2 years there, and then went to Florida State University in Tallahassee, and spent my last 2 years there. And I graduated from Tallahassee, and I went through the Army ROTC program there at Tallahassee. I put 4 years into 2 years of doing that, and on August the 3rd of 1973, I raised my right hand at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I swore to protect the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and foreign domestic. And I did that, and I did not know what the future was going to be, but it sure turned out to be an amazing journey for me.
And that was when you were commissioned as second lieutenant in the Army, and as becoming a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, I would imagine the same oath. And then from there, I guess you went into more infantry training, and you also went into special forces. So tell us a little bit about that, Danny.
Yeah, when I started in that August of 1973, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia as an infantry officer. I had to go through my basic course there. I did that. And then I went right from there at Fort Benning to airborne school. Enjoyed 3 weeks of doing that, jumping out of perfectly good airplanes and stuff. And then from there, I went right to Ranger School, and that was in January of 1974. And I did January, February, and March, the 3 phases of Ranger School from Fort Benning, Dahlonega, Georgia, and McNeil, the Air Force Base down there at Panama City area. And that was got me through Ranger School. And then, lo and behold, I ended up being a Ranger instructor in Dahlonega, Georgia, which was quite a challenge for a guy that grew up in Florida when it's really warm here. But in Dahlonega, Georgia, it gets really cold. And I spent a lot of time dealing with snow and stuff that I never thought about. And that's really how my career really started and took off from there.
So, and that kind of brings you forward. You got promoted to various ranks, first lieutenant, captain, and major. And as a major, as I recall, and I'm just going now, not by anything that we talked about, but by the movie Black Hawk Down, you were involved in that. I think it was called Task Force Ranger back on October 3rd of 1993. So maybe you could tell us what led up to that and a little bit about your role in that.
Yeah, well, I was the battalion commander for 3rd Ranger Battalion at that time. I had taken command of 3rd Ranger Battalion in 1992 at Fort Benning. And so I was a lieutenant colonel, battalion commander. I had already done just about every job they had in the Ranger Regiment. I had been in the Ranger Regimental Headquarters as the S1. I'd been the XO for the regiment, etc. But I had the great privilege of getting to command 3rd Ranger Battalion. And it was a little bit of a challenge for me taking command there because I came in to take the place of one of my best friends who had been killed in a helicopter crash about 2 months before I took command. And so, you know, that made it a little different for me than it would probably most people, but I took command in February of 1993. And we went to Korea for 3 weeks for an exercise over there. It was just a great opportunity for me. And then, yes, the thing known as Black Hawk Down in Mogadishu, Somalia took place in October of 1993. The actual battle itself was on the 3rd and 4th of October of 93. And I will tell you that it was one of the toughest things I probably ever had to live through. And the only thing that still to this day, I don't know if you call it bothers me, but it sticks with me. And that is that 6 of my Rangers got killed that day. And that's something that you just really, I don't think, ever get away from remembering that, in all honesty. But that is what took place in the book, of course, in the movie known as Black Hawk Down.
And I think most people have seen the movie Black Hawk Down, and your role was played by Tom Sizemore in the movie. And you've since written a book, and it's called The Streets of Mogadishu, and the subtitle is Leadership at its Best, Political Correctness at its Worst. And as I tried to find out more about the book and learn about the book, you said it's not really a Black Hawk Down book, but it's in some way a little bit different than that. So maybe you could tell us about your book and why you wrote it and what's it about.
All right. Well, I think you really are very correct that the book I wrote is not Black Hawk Down Again or anything like that, because that's been done. There's things in my book that talks about the battle, certainly, but I thought there was more important things, in all honesty, that needed to be talked about when I say leadership at its best, political correctness at its worst as a subtitle. Leadership, to me, is one of the most important things that we have to be able to do. And if we're officers and we're supposed to be leading, we need to make sure people understand that that's what we do. I was in the lead vehicle during that battle that day on October 3rd and 4th. And a lot of people have challenged me and asked, well, why would you put yourself in the lead vehicle in the front right seat? Because the bad guys know that that's somebody that's a leader. Why would you do that? And I say, well, where do you think I should be? They said, well, it seems like you would have some other vehicle in front of you instead of that. And I said, well, you know, I think it's because I learned to lead, and I learned to lead from the front. I don't know how to lead from anywhere behind. Okay? And so that was a big deal to me, and I really made that book really start out, especially the first 3 chapters, talking about what leadership is, because that's what our young men and women need to hear about and understand, because I don't think the leadership that we had above us was very good. I will tell you the leadership of everybody that was in Mogadishu was absolutely superb. Major General Garrison, Colonel Jerry Boykin, all of those people were phenomenal leaders. And I was blessed to be leading my guys, and then the other guys that were leading the aviators and the special forces guys, the Delta guys. It was a great, great thing. But it was leadership that was so important, because I would tell you, we lost 17. It could have easily been 70. And the reason we didn't lose more is because we had good leaders out there. And it wasn't just me with my guys. I had other subordinates that were superb, officers and platoon sergeants and everything. They really did a great job. And had they not done that as great leaders, we would have had a much tougher day, and it probably wouldn't have come out as well as it did ended up coming out, in all honesty. So that was really the focus of the leadership part. The political correctness part, I don't mind talking about it, because I'm very politically incorrect. And there were political decisions that were made that should have never been made. And for that reason, political correctness is something we have got to stay away from. We need to be politically incorrect and do the hard right things. General Garrison was a great leader. He did a great job over there. And he had some political things that were rammed down basically our throats, not by him, but by people in the White House did some of that.
Danny, I'd like to make a comment for our viewers, in that you said you were in the lead vehicle. And if somebody really thought about it, then if I'm an officer, I'm in the lead vehicle. Am I going to put somebody else in the lead vehicle and put them in harm so I can protect myself? There's no way that's going to happen. And that's really what you were doing, is you were saying, hey, I'm out here in front and I'm going to lead, and I'm not going to put somebody else in harm's way just to protect myself. And also on political correctness, we haven't really talked about this, but when I watched the movie, which is my only reference, there were some things in the plan that were taken out of the plan. And once, as military officers, what we know for sure is, if you have a plan, it's probably going to work, and you're going to make it work somehow. And things always change. But when you start removing elements of the plan before you even get started, the plan is almost doomed to disaster. And I remember there were supposed to be some things happen that didn't happen. For example, you were supposed to have air cover from a C-130 Spectre gunship, and that was pulled away from you. Was that pulled away by the White House?
Well, I really give you something just before that you would only know if you've read my book, in all honesty, or you hear me speak. We were at Fort Bliss, Texas for an exercise, my battalion was, when we got alerted to go to Fort Bragg. So we go to Fort Bragg, and I take one of my companies, that was Bravo Company, and I take an additional platoon. That's what the size of force they wanted me to have. And so we went to Fort Bragg, and we got there and started training on August the 12th. On August the 22nd, General Garrison said, we have met all the things we need to do. Get some rest, and then we'll be ready to go, because we were going to deploy on August the 24th or 25th, somewhere in there. Well, later that day, we were called, the leaders were called to General Garrison's office and talked to him there at Bragg. And he said, there's been some changes. He said, the mission has been called off. That mission was called off on August the 22nd. We were told to return to Fort Bliss. The aviators would go back to Fort Campbell, and of course the Delta Force element would stay there at Fort Bragg. Well, we got back to Fort Bliss, my guys did. We've been there 10 hours, and we were notified that the mission was back on, and we went back to Fort Bragg the next day. That made people really wonder, who is making some of these decisions? And I promise you, they were political decisions. They were not military decisions. So we still are going to deal with that. We get to Fort Bragg, and we're going to get ready to deploy on the 24th or 25th to Mogadishu, Somalia. General Garrison had gone forward, and then I had to go with the other leaders. We had to get a briefing from his deputy commander that stayed behind. Two of the things that were briefed to us was Task Force Ranger that had 551 people planned to go has been reduced to 450. I had that one platoon of 45 with me, in addition to my one company. They were taken out of the mission. And they said that the reason for that supposedly was they didn't want this to look like a build-up similar to Vietnam. Well, Bill, you've been there. You understand that. And there is no way that that political decision should have been made. The second political decision is the one you touched on, and that was the AC-130 gunship that we had rehearsed with, and it had been taken away from us too. I think there was somebody at some level, political level, saying, you know, if we take these things away, maybe these people will just know they can't do it and they won't do it. They obviously didn't understand the mentality that we have as American soldiers.
And I guess a lot of people don't know the history of all this, but the reason why you went there was because the 20,000 Marines that were there in Somalia were evacuated from Somalia, and you guys went in, your unit went in to take cover for them. And also the UN peacekeepers were there as well, and I'm not so sure that they gave you much help.
No, they didn't. And you're right that when we were there, we had our force. The Marines had been there in December of 1992 and done a phenomenal job of providing food and support to the Somalis that really needed it. But unfortunately, they didn't get to stay that long, and we came in shortly after they had departed, as you probably well know.
Yeah. So you lost men there, and that's got to weigh heavy on you. And in our own private conversations, you told me about 6 of your Rangers that were didn't make it. Could you tell us what you do now and what you got coming up in October of this year?
Well, this October will be the 25th year since 1993 happened, and it's something that I have really committed myself to doing. And every 5 years since 1993, a journey has been made. And that journey is made with me and my wife. And the journey is to go visit the grave sites of my 6 guys that made the ultimate sacrifice that day. And I do that because, for one thing, I get to see some of the families. Out of the 6 that have passed, 4 of them I usually get to see. And it also, I think, makes people understand we should never, ever forget those that have paid the ultimate price for our country. And that's the reason I will be doing that again this late September, early October, to visit my 6 guys' grave sites. And I will go from Rehoboth, Massachusetts, to Vineland, New Jersey, to Arlington National Cemetery, where there are 2 are buried there. I'll go to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I will go to El Paso, Texas. And those 6 kids of mine will never, ever be forgotten as long as I'm walking, talking, and breathing.
And that's what is really known as real leadership from beginning all the way throughout. So now you also are on a kind of like a speaking engagement tour and book signing tour. You do a lot of that, I know, in our local area and other areas. Tell us about your speaking, and also you have a DVD. So if anybody that's watching this, you can get the DVD or the book from Danny. And the book is Streets of Mogadishu. But anyway, tell us a little bit about all that.
All right. Well, when I retired from the Army and I came back home to Rockledge, I actually became the Homeland Security guy, first one to do it for the Brevard County EOC. I did that for about 19 months, and then I was asked to go to the college, now Eastern Florida State College, and do the same thing, be an instructor for Homeland Security issues. How do we deal with that and everything? Because that was still pretty new in those days, as we know. So anyway, did that, and I had been doing some speaking at that point, but not a lot. I probably was doing, 20, 25. Well, my wife, Linda, and I, she made a comment to me about, you said that you're trying to sort out how you can do the speaking thing and keep working at the college. She says, what are you going to do? I said, I'm not sure. I think I may have to give up the speaking thing. And she was very short with me on that and said, I've heard you speak enough and you're pretty good at it, and I think you ought to continue to do that because your message is what's important, and it is very important. So I listened to her, and that was in 2006, and I will tell you that since then I average about 80 events a year across the country. I have spoken in every state in the United States of America, every province in Canada, Puerto Rico 5 times, and since I've retired, I have gone to Afghanistan to visit our troops on 2 different occasions. I do that because I want all of them that are willing to listen to me will understand how important I think they are, and I always want them to know that if they ever need me, I've got their back no matter what. So that's what I've been doing now since 2006. This is 2018, so it's been an amazing journey. I do a whole lot with law enforcement. I do some military, but I probably do 70% at least with law enforcement, first responders, fire and rescue, etc. And it's been one of the greatest journeys that I could have ever imagined in my life. It really has, Bill.
So this journey really started right here in Cocoa, Florida back in 1969, and here we are in 2018, and you're continuing this journey. And Danny, what you're really doing is you're serving our nation, and you're showing the way to people of what we should be doing, what we should be all about. And I think some of that is really lacking in education today, and people don't know their history, and that's really what you and I are trying to do right now is bring a little bit of history to the forefront.
I agree with you. The history thing is amazing how poorly it is done, in my opinion, because if you want to ask a young student that maybe, let's say they're in the 6th or 7th or even 8th grade maybe, and you ask them, what do you know about World War II? And they said, well, nothing. Okay, what do you know about the Vietnam War? Really nothing. See, they're not teaching our young men and young women that are in school the history of our country that's made us who we are today. And every one of those, from World War I all the way forward to today, we're just not getting that message across, and therefore our young men and women do not really appreciate our country as much as they should, because they do not know the history of it.
And such a small percentage end up going into military service like we do. I think the entire military forces, and I had this in my book, I think is active duty is somewhere around 1.3 million, and these numbers may be a little bit different now, and maybe about 400,000 or more in the reserves and National Guards and so forth. So we're talking about less than 2 million out of 320 some million people are actually in the service, and they just miss out on so much because they just don't understand how important it is to really learn how to be with people and learn how to, maybe I'm having a hard time saying this, but learning what our nation is all about, and learning to protect our nation, and learning that there's a higher mission in life than just playing video games and hanging out.
Yep, I agree with that, and I sort of have an idea in my own mind, and I'd mentioned it to you a little bit, and I'm sure most people would think it's maybe slightly crazy, but I believe that when our kids graduate from high school, I think before they really even need to go to college, or if they want to go to their 4-year college and then afterwards, I think all of them should understand they need to go spend 2 years serving our country. You know, I just think that would be a great program for 2 years for our young men and young women to learn what it means to be an American and say that I am part of that. And that's what they could do if they could do something like that. I know that's never going to happen in our country, but there's a couple of countries that really make sure it happens there. South Korea is one of them. A guy was playing golf, a professional golfer from South Korea. He had to leave after his last tournament about a year ago because he owed his 2 years to his country. And we know in Israel it's the same way. And I don't think 2 years out of your life is really too much when you're young, if you want to do it before you go to college or afterwards, but one side or the other, you should spend 2 years. And I think our country would be so much better off. I really do.
And I do as well. And I think, you know, this is really great what you're talking about, because I just know that going through officer candidate course, which is boot camp for Marines, we learn, you know, you can get through adversity, and you learn that you don't need a safe space in order to survive and become a better person. And by being in the service, I also learned that I could multitask, and I could handle just about anything that came along. And that really helped prepare me for my later life. And I'm sure that if everybody had that opportunity, they would be better off, and our country would be better off, like you say.
Yep, I agree.
So, Danny, you've got some local things going on. Tell us, what do you have in the future? Other than, I know you talked about visiting the grave sites of our fallen heroes at your guys.
Well, I just so happens tomorrow I will be over in Orlando. There's a book signing going on over there by a guy named Boone, who was part of the Benghazi guys. And he's going to have a book signing over there from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. I don't know exactly the location yet, but I'll find it. But they've asked me, Boone did, if I would be willing to come over and do my book signing with him at the same time. And so I look forward to doing that tomorrow over there. And then tomorrow evening, about 6 p.m., I get to throw the first pitch out at the Vieira USSSA baseball field, and that's for the Women's World Series, and that is baseball. And I get to throw the first pitch out for them, and Governor Rick Scott's going to be standing beside me, and I look forward to that opportunity too, to do something like that. And when I can do it right here in Brevard County, it just thrills me to death.
That's fantastic. You get a chance to meet with the governor. I actually had the opportunity to meet the governor earlier this year. I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was April or May. He was doing a tour for veterans around the state, and I actually even received a medal and a handshake from him, got a picture taken with the governor. So I think he's been doing a great job, and I don't want this to get too political, but let's face it, we need to have better leadership in our Senate and in our state.
I agree with you on that one, and I remember exactly what you were talking about when Governor Scott was making that trip around the state for veterans and everything. And I went to a couple of those myself just to be there because I enjoyed being around them. The lines were really long, so I didn't stay too long at the end. But I'm glad that somebody like you can talk about Governor Scott and what he did and that medal that he gave all of the veterans. That was great. I'm glad you got yours.
Yeah, that was really quite an honor. It was down in Melbourne, which for people who are not in our know about our area is maybe about 20 to 30 minute drive south of here, and I believe it was at an armory down there, and the place was crowded. It was standing room only all over the place, and I was really quite fortunate. I happened to be in the right standing room only, but I happened to be in the right place where I got in line and got my medal somewhat early. But there were people there just overflowing, and they're all veterans, all our nation's heroes.
You're exactly right, and that's what they are. They are our nation's heroes.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything you'd like to talk about as far as your DVD is part of your speaking tour, and I think it's just what a compressed version of your talks on leadership?
Yes, and that's what the DVD is. It's not a long version by any means, because like when I do speak, I do anything, and this is the honest truth, from 30 minutes to a full 7-hour day. So I can definitely, as my wife says, I can talk a long time, but I do that because I'll focus on leadership really being the first part of the day. If, say, it's doing 3 hours in the morning or 3.5, and then after a lunch break for an hour and a half, then go 3.5 hours in the afternoon. With the second part of it is what I use Mogadishu and talk about Black Hawk Down, and that because people are very interested to know the rest of the story that they've maybe never heard. So that's just been a really good part of it all to me. And I hope that I can continue to do it. I probably do 70%, like I said, with law enforcement, fire and rescue, the very important people that are protecting us each and every day. And I'm going to try to continue to do it as long as people will want me to hear me. And I'm looking forward to a couple more that I've got coming up around the country pretty soon. Well, if the people around the country are any indicator of the
the veterans in Brevard County, you're going to be busy for a long, long time, and you have such an important message to give. And I wish we had time that you could do the whole 7 hours here, but really what we want to do is introduce our viewers to the fact that you do have the DVD, and they can order the book from you, and they can order the DVD, and they can use it just for their own individual benefit to learn leadership, and then be able to pass that on to other people as well.
And the other important thing I think that I need to say is I have a website. It's a pretty simple one, but it's exactly the way I want it. And it's just www.dannymcknight.com. If you go to that, my website's there. You will find probably everything that you would be interested in looking at or seeing, and that's where you will also find the ability to download ordering the book from me off of my website. So that's something that's important. That's one way people can get a book from me. And I also, in traveling, always have books with me when I'm going places where I travel. So, but locally here, they can make it easy. They can call me, and they can meet me for coffee or meet me for a Diet Coke or something, and I'll get books in their hand and the DVD, okay?
Yeah, and of course, with the article that will this video will be embedded in, we'll have all that information for you. And I can tell you myself, I really like Danny's website, and it's really a great website. And when you open it up, down the left-hand side, you have all the tabs there for books and leadership, everything you want to know. It's a very good website, really a good one. So. Danny, it's just really been an honor for me and all of our viewers to have you on the show and have you on the American Vision and share with us your experiences and your story, and tell us, how we can get a hold of your book and DVD, because I know that you've told me, I think on the phone, that you're very modest, and you said your little book has sold more than 40,000 copies at this time?
That's what my publisher said. We were approaching 40,000 right around the corner, hopefully. I know we went over 30, and that's what we're shooting for now. Is if it gets to 40, that's great. And I will say something about my book in terms of if you purchase it. The book is $17.95, and what we have done when we travel is we go for make it $20. And the reason that was done was my wife, being smarter than me, she said, it's really hard making $2.05 change when you're in Oregon. And so I agreed with her. And what we do is, with that other $2.05, we created our own Wounded Warrior Fund. And we have approached close to $8,000 that we have provided for Wounded Warriors. Not Wounded Warrior Project. We do it for Wounded Warriors that we know need help. And we've been blessed. And once again, the book has been a really big part of that. Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because now I think our viewers can also see this is you're looking at pure leadership right now. You're looking at an example of leadership, and not only doing something for himself, but doing something for vets, and then also doing something, setting up a fund for our wounded warriors. And I can tell you this, as an author, I know Danny is not making a penny off of this book, because we just don't make any money off of it. And if you got a penny per hour for every hour you put into this, you'd be a rich man. But we don't get paid for any of this. We do it out of the love of what we're doing. I agree with that. Exactly. That's the right statement. Thank you. Okay. So anyway, Patriots, thank you so much for viewing this. And Danny, thank you. God bless you, and God bless all of our active duty personnel, our vets, and God bless America. Amen to that.
Okay, boys and girls, I'm back, and I want to thank Danny McKnight for being such a wonderful guest. And this was really kind of an unusual situation where we both did the interview from my condo unit here in Cocoa, Florida, and it all worked out well. Fortunately, we have two computers with cameras and mics, and also now I have a book, Streets of Mogadishu. If you look in the background here, you can see that's the book, but for whatever reason, my drop screen did it in landscape, not in portrait, so it's hard to see the whole thing. And of course, he signed it as well. And oh, pardon me, gave me his business card. And so here it is right here. You can see this, Colonel Danny McKnight and his book. And you too can get this book, and you can get the video as well. And Danny will sign the book for you. He will actually sign it and send it. You get it from his website, which is what we have here. And also, Danny now has a copy of 2020, A Clear Vision for America. And if you notice, the cover of his book is Leadership at its Best, Political Correctness at its Worst. I hope you think about my book being something good about leadership, and also pointing out how political correctness is one of the worst things that happened to America today. So again, God bless you all. God bless our active duty personnel, our vets, our fallen heroes. And God save our America, because we need you now more than ever before.